All right, so recording is in progress. So again, thank you all for joining us here today. We will go straight into a round of introductions here. So I am Ruthie Stafford. I'm Senior Director of the Consulting Services here at MCNC. I've been on the security side of the house for a little over 8 years now, so I'm helping coordinate this project. And joining me here today are Dave, Gons, and Ian. Dave, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yes, good afternoon. Dave Furness, K-12 advocate, also have service management responsibility for Zscaler. Up until recently was also managing the consulting team, but I have a pending retirement, and I guess it was effective last Monday. Bradley Stevens, who some of you may know, has succeeded me as manager of the consulting team. So it's nice to join you guys.
Great. Thanks, Dave. And Gons?
I'm Gons. I'm lead client network engineer in the client network engineering group. I've probably worked with quite a few of you in the past few years.
And done. Thanks, Gon. Ian?
Hey, everybody. My name's Ian Hadfield. I'm a senior network architect and in charge of the networking side of all the firewalls that y'all use.
Wonderful. Thanks, Ian. All right. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and kick it off. I'm going to hand it over to Dave to give you guys some context around this project, where we are, where we're going, and then we'll get right into it. Dave?
Sure, thanks. So Ruthie alluded to this in her introductory remarks, but what we're doing on this project is something that the community pretty much has been asking for since we rolled out Zscaler as a cloud-based web security service probably 12 or 13 years ago. And that's to have a configuration that allows our PSUs to actually see the private IP addresses in the log files, and Gons will go into that a little bit, but we weren't able to do that until we moved from the Cisco ASA platform to the Palo Alto platform a couple of years ago. I'll talk a little bit about that more here in a second with a couple of diagrams I have, but essentially that allowed us to move where we do network address translation from our router to the Palo Alto firewall. So that's a big win, and again, Gons will kind of walk you through what the logs will look like after we make the migration. The other thing we've done as part of this work is the way we're re-IPing, the way we're reconfiguring the firewalls. Basically, it eliminates any user traffic from terminating or originating directly on the outside interface on the firewall, which is a security improvement. We started looking at this project literally once we moved to the Palo as the managed firewall. We tested probably for a year. Ian led that testing. We started off in January of this year, and we were focused on migrating what we've deemed 95 priority migrations. The reason they were priority migrations was we had some Cisco infrastructure that was going into life, and we wanted to get those out of the network. So those first 95 were more complex in that they included these configuration changes, but also in most cases included replacing some of the physical infrastructure. Fortunately, we don't have to do that on this next round of migration work, and so really it's limited to just pushing a configuration change. We're kicking off phase 2. That's the purpose of this webinar, obviously. We've got about 130 sites. We're trying to do what, Ruthie, over the next 9 months, 12 months? I can't remember the exact schedule.
Yep.
It's important to note that, and I know this was in the communication that was set as part of the registration, but there'll be a maintenance window required of 2 to 3 hours. probably be less, but we just want to make sure we've got sufficient time and we set the right expectation. The downtime will be probably right around an hour. It is important that each one of you have someone on site during the maintenance period so that we can test with you after we've made our changes to make sure that everything's working properly. We had very few issues on the first 95. Probably the biggest issue we had was showing up on site and finding out that the PSU had installed a switch for some reason. Maybe there's a third-party maintenance contract. Maybe there was a voice over IP service they had gone to, but they'd installed a switch between the firewall and our router. This configuration will not support that. So if you believe you have equipment located between the firewall and our router, then we'll need to work together prior to the GRE migration to find an alternative solution to doing that. Go next slide, Ruthie. So I mentioned I don't want to get in too much into the detail here, but in the current configuration, and this is kind of there's different phases of this, but I'm showing the Cisco ASA firewall. You all have Palos now, but when we started with the service rollout years ago, there was a Cisco ASA in there, and we didn't have the capability to originate or source the GRE tunnels at the Cisco ASA. So we were sourcing those tunnels outside of the NANET boundary. So basically, we're sourcing public IP addresses into that GRE tunnel and then sending those off to the primary and secondary Zscaler private security edge devices. So that's why currently, when you look in your Zscaler logs, you're seeing public IP addresses, and those public IP addresses basically reflect the NATed internal IP addresses. Next slide. So with the deployment of the Palo Altos, again, we spent about a year testing to make sure that not only was the functionality there, but the performance was there. So now instead of sourcing those GRE tunnels at the aggregation service router, we're sourcing the tunnels at the Palo. So what's going into those tunnels is the private IP address on your network, and therefore once the migration is complete, you'll be seeing private IP addresses in your logs versus the public IP address that have been added to, which is a big win. It gives you more visibility, greater granularity in configuring your policies. Gans, you want to go into a little more detail on that?
Sure. As Dave mentioned, the
next slide,
logs, the logs in Zscaler will be showing your internal address space. If you're looking at that top graphic at the top, that's what your Zscaler sublocations currently look like. They are based on the NAT that are configured in the firewall. So in some cases, you would have a singular NAT, like a server, like you see in this example with the AD server, but mostly you'll have those PATs that are associated with individual schools or individual segments of the network. As in the next iteration, we will actually be reconfiguring these to actually mirror your internal subnets. Prior to this webinar, I have done some of the pre-work. So I've gone in there and I've already opened the tickets to have your new IP address that's going to be associated with those tunnels configured into your UI. So if you look in there, you'll see a 10 address in there as the source of the tunnel. And then if there were PATs in the firewall, I went ahead and configured this so that it mirrors the internal subnets that were associated with those PATs. All that information is still in there because it has to remain in there in order for the service to work until after the migration is complete. But after the migration is completed, You will no longer see those 152.26.x addresses as the client IP address in your logs. You'll start to see those internal subnets, whatever that host happens to be. What I'm recommending in a lot of cases is that your sublocations aren't actually broken down to a granular level that would probably give you the best benefit when you're looking at the logs. So if you're willing, I am happy to work with you before your migration to get your sublocations configured properly. But if you don't, I'll be reaching out after the migration to try to encourage you to do that. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have good sublocation configurations, the logs are going to be a mess. Not to say that you won't see the internal addresses, because you will. We can't stop that from happening because of where the source of the GRE is terminated. But having sublocations that are easy to identify where that traffic actually lives will help you to identify issues in your network. And when we talk about this after the migration, you'll understand what I'm saying. I think that's all I have, Dave.
Thanks, Gons. That's a good transition. Dave, anything else before we go to the next section?
No.
Okay, so you heard Gons mention pre-work. So we put a couple of slides together that we want to walk through with you all to help set expectations around what this actual project looks like, what we need from you, what we're doing in the background, what it looks like during the maintenance window. So we're going to walk through some of these pieces. You heard a little bit of what Gons was already talking about. I'll give it back to him in just a minute. But even before that, the initiation phase is where we are right now, right? So we've already distributed this questionnaire. It was in the communication that went out that included the invite to this session. We will send that out again. So if you have not already responded to that questionnaire, please do so. That is going to allow you to pick your preferred date for this migration over the coming months. I would recommend, because we are going to start really pushing people to sign up, that you go ahead and use that questionnaire to pick the date that works best for you and your team, so that that works in your schedule. So once you respond to that questionnaire, Heather Markley, who's the project manager who's coordinating this project for MCNC, will create a ServiceNow case for you. And as we go through this, that's going to be the primary point where you're going to be communicating back with MCNC on the pre-work that Gons and Ian are going to talk about, and during the migration and then post-migration. From that case being created, Heather also will create a calendar invite for you based on the information that you provided in the questionnaire, and the communication she'll have back and forth with you on the time specifically that you want to schedule. So morning, afternoon, whatever the time is that works best for you for this migration. We'll put that in the case, and then we'll get that calendar invite sent out to you. So you confirm via that calendar invite that, yes, this is the right date and time for me. And then that is the full process for that initial initiation of getting you enrolled in the project. And then the pre-work, even though Gons already said he started some pre-work already, but the pre-work begins. So Gons, I'll go ahead and hand it off to you, and then you can hand it off to Ian for the 2.0 phase.
Okay, thank you. So as I mentioned, the Zscaler pre-work, I've already started doing that because that's something that we can provision without impacting your service today, and it just gives us a leg up so that as soon as that queue opens up for these migrations, we can go ahead and get going. But there's additional pre-work that needs to be done on the networking side, which is what Ian and his team will be working on. But as I mentioned before, if you want to start working on this before your migration, I'm more than happy to work with you. Just send me an email and I'll queue you up. Ian.
Cool. Thanks, Gons. Hey, everybody. Just wanted to give you a little background on what you might see in your firewall before your migration day. So we do have some network pre-work that we can do ahead of time. So you will see some changes on your firewall. They won't be active. They won't be in use. They'll kind of just be there waiting for the actual maintenance window. But some of those changes are, for example, you'll probably get a new outside subinterface to connect to MCNC, but it won't have an IP address. For example, you'll get some additional loopback interfaces, some additional tunnel interfaces, some actual GRE configuration for this, additional security policy to allow all this new traffic to leave the firewall and enter the firewall. And then how we actually steer traffic into the tunnel is by using what Palo calls it policy-based forwarding. Cisco calls it policy-based routing. So you'll see some policy-based forwarding rules show up on the firewall. However, they'll be disabled until the actual maintenance window. And usually we try to get that into your firewall anywhere from about half a week to a week before your maintenance window. So when you see that additional config pop into the firewall, we didn't want you all to be surprised. And then I guess next slide.
Do you want to talk about or just highlight the requirement of, again?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yep, sorry, totally glossed over that.
Yeah.
Also, like Dave mentioned earlier, if there is a device between the firewall and the CPE, and we know about it, we will reach out to you beforehand, before the maintenance window, and I'll probably work with you all to see what we can do to remove that device, but not remove its connectivity. We have a couple options there, and we've been able to, anyone else in our previous migrations in phase one, we were able to get them back up and running and connectivity connected.
Right. And so just to flag that, it is in the questionnaire to ask specifically if you have one of those devices. And if so, again, you letting us know sooner rather than later is helpful. If you don't know, there is also an option for I don't know. So go ahead and fill that out and we'll be happy to support you and help you figure that out. All right. Next slide, maybe. There we go, Ian.
Okay, so for the actual maintenance window, nothing needs to be changed from a physical standpoint, unless, of course, there is a device between the CPE and the firewall and it gets removed during the maintenance window. But the CPE model will stay the same, the firewall model will stay the same, all that good stuff. If you do have a remote access VPN, the Global Protect, we will need to update your DNS record because the IP address of the Global Protect portal and gateway will change. If your DNS is handled by MCNC, we will take care of that on the back end during the maintenance window. But if you take care of your own DNS, then someone will need to make that change during the maintenance window. We also are going to have, we're also going to migrate site-to-site VPN tunnels, so IPsec VPN tunnels. We aren't necessarily going to need to migrate those tunnels during the maintenance window. Sometimes that's hard, especially if you're connecting to a third party on the other end of that window, or other end of that tunnel, excuse me. So we can do that after the fact. If we can do it during the maintenance window, that's great, but it's not a showstopper if we can't. Also during the maintenance window, then we also will be migrating the CPE configuration and the firewall configuration to match the new architecture. There is a downtime for that. Like Dave was saying, we have the maintenance window of 2 to 3 hours. We're expecting the changes to only take about an hour, assuming nothing goes wrong. So there will be downtime no matter what, but hopefully we'll try to keep it to a minimum. And then once the changes come back up, you should be using the new Zscaler tunnels, and you should see your RFC 1918 addresses within the Zscaler portal. Once we get to that point, whoever is the on-site contact who's working that night with us, we would ask them to test, connect a Chromebook or a laptop or something to the staff network if you have it, or guest network if you have it. Make sure you can't get to bad sites, all that good stuff, to make sure that the next morning when the kids come into school that everything still works for them and they can learn what they need to learn. And then after the maintenance window, post-deployment, again, is those IPsec VPN tunnels if you have them. If we couldn't migrate them during the maintenance window, then Heather would reach out and try to find a time when we can migrate those to the new IP address. And I think that was everything.
That's right. Yep. So those are the big buckets, right, of the steps of this process for this project. So a couple of things here, just to get it up on the screen for you. So we already said this once when we were talking about creating the case. for technical support on the project, communicate with us via the case once Heather sets that up for you. Heather's email address is also there. You can coordinate with her for, outside of that case if need be, but we would definitely recommend that you do that directly through the ServiceNow case. And then for escalation, if needed, there's that security services at mcnc.org alias that will also get additional attention if need be. So we have sort of covered, actually, let me pause. Dave, Gons, Ian, anything else that you guys want to add from a project perspective before we go through some of the known questions that we get and then open it up for Q&A for everybody else?
No, I'm good.
Nope, I don't think so.
Okay, all right. So as Dave mentioned earlier, we have gone through this project now with 90 or so PSUs over the past several months. So some of the questions that we've seen consistently are here on the screen. I'll sort of read through these and then go ahead and be thinking about if you have any additional questions. And I saw one that already came through the Q&A. We can answer those live next. So for one of the questions that we got that we received pretty frequently was for user traffic not redirected to the Zscaler project or proxies, will web applications see a new range of public IP addresses from my PSU? The answer is no. The network address translation and added IP address pools used by the PAN firewall for non-Zscaler traffic will not change. So for user traffic redirected to the Zscaler proxies, will web applications see a new range of public IP addresses from your PSU? Again, the answer is no. When Zscaler proxies traffic, the source IP of the user's device is replaced with one of the Zscaler proxy IPs. So the pool of Zscaler proxy IPs assigned by MCNC will not be impacted or changed by this project. Should you expect network downtime, right? We've already said that, that during this maintenance window, internet service from MCNC will not be available. We see a typical downtime of 1 hour, and we are recommending that 2 to 3 hour maintenance window for you to think around the day that we're going to do your migration. How early is too early and how late is too late for the maintenance window? So when you're responding to that question and the questionnaire or coordinating with Heather, so we're going to do everything that we can to coordinate with you for the time that works best for you and accommodate your schedule. So acknowledging that there will be a network downtime period, probably around an hour. We recommend that you don't schedule it in the morning right before an instructional day in the event that something were to occur during that maintenance window that extended that outage. And then for the afternoon, we're recommending starting no later than 6 p.m. Again, that would have a 3 hour maintenance window going into 9 o'clock. We want to make sure that we have enough time to test again for going into an instructional day the next day. So those are sort of the main questions that we see that we've seen through this process. Any comments, questions, concerns that you guys have for us while we have everyone here to kick off this project? All right, Matt, I see you raised your hand. If you could type the question in the Q&A for us, right on that bottom of that Zoom link there, or the Zoom bar, you can click on the Q&A and type that question in there for us. And then during this process, if you have sort of any immediate questions that before you answer the questionnaire, you can also email that security services alias and Heather Markley. We can help answer any questions that you may have in advance of actually responding to the questionnaire to get on the schedule. All right, so question came in. Are these security changes required by law? So do we want to just sort of talk about, again, Dave, maybe highlight the point behind doing this particular project?
Yeah, sure. I'm looking at the question. No, they're not required by law, but it's something that will provide significant value to the PSU, and it's, Ian, correct me if I'm wrong, but at some point we're going to have to, that those routers are going to go end of life as well. So at some point it has to be done.
They would someday, yeah.
Yeah, so this is going to be, I mean, this is a required project, right? We are going for all those 131 schools or so that we have on the list. We do need to go through this project with everyone. It's not a required by law piece, but it's from a service support perspective to get everyone to go through this project.
Can I add something, Ruthie?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not going to complicate your network. It's actually going to simplify it for you somewhat, because the complexity is in the service and nothing in your network really changes.
Got it. Yeah. Thanks, Gons. And you're absolutely right. The follow-up to that question was obviously there have been some recent legislation that has made changes to responsibilities for the PSUs. This is not one of those things in reaction to that. It is a separate project.
But it will help, because having those internal addresses will help you be able to identify those users more easily.
That's a good point. Thanks, Gons. All right. What other questions, comments, concerns do you all have for us today? Is there anything other than being on site and testing the day of the change that we would need to do directly to help with the preparations? So again, going back to that, coordinating with Heather for getting, on the schedule and confirming as she reaches out. We need that from you. I think Ian mentioned that during the pre-work, if there is anything that may come up, we'll coordinate with you via the case during that pre-work. Anything else that you guys would want to highlight? And obviously anything that if there are any IPsec tunnels that need to be migrated after the maintenance window, we'd coordinate with you for those as well. But the big chunk of the work is on the MCNC team before and during and after the maintenance window. The big piece that we need from you is being on site during that testing period. What else?
Ian, did you want to reiterate anything about DNS with regard to if the DNS is locally hosted or hosted by a third party, not by MCNC?
Yeah, sorry. I thought I was doing that, but I was still on mute. Yeah, so if you run your own DNS and you have the Global Protect Remote Access VPN, we'll need you to update the DNS record. Basically, whatever your URL is for Global Protect, the IP address will change. So we'll need you to update your DNS record if you run DNS and if you have Global Protect. If you have Global Protect, but we run your DNS, then we'll do that for you. The only other thing I think people will have to do is before the maintenance window, of course, work with me if you have a device between the CPE and the firewall.
And something else along the lines of the DNS, if you do manage your own DNS, we recommend that at least the day before you lower the TTLs on your record so that when the change is made in your DNS, that change will replicate quickly.
Yes, good point.
And we coordinate that with, you don't have to necessarily remember that step from this webinar before we get to the maintenance window. It's a part of the communication, the pre-work. We'll be communicating with you on those necessary steps. So there was an additional question that came in. If the VPN connection information is changing, we need to modify DNS. Do we need to update anything in Google for the originating auth session?
No, because it still comes from the same fully qualified domain name. It's just a different IP address.
Great. Thanks, Hans. Any other comments, questions, concerns? I can tell you the four of us on this webinar are really good at not hanging around awkwardly, just to make the time elapse that I put on your calendars. And I'm sure all of you would love, 28 minutes back on your day that's been blocked out and saved for you. So we're happy to wrap up early. If you do have any questions, obviously contact information listed on the screen here. We'll be sending out the recording. We'll be sending out the additional information. Coordinate with us. We look forward to getting this project started. Let us know if you need anything in the meantime. Dave, Gons, Ian, anything that you three would like to add before we wrap up here?
No, I think I'm good.
All right. Well, hearing nothing else, I will be happy to close the Zoom session. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their afternoon, and we look forward to getting this started here pretty soon with you all. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.